And to explain this, I started off the same way, and I said, anybody want a job that pays in my business cards? And I said, I hope you have enough sense not to take it, because these things are worth nothing, right? You can check eBay, they are worth nothing. Okay. I said, so now I can't hire anybody with these. But now I'm going to tell you there's one more thing going on. There's only one door out of here. There's a guy there with a 9mm. He works for me. And you can't get out of here without one of these cards. Now you're all unemployed. Now you're all looking for paid work in this card, and you can't find it. Because there isn't any way to get these cards. Now I offer you all a job. If you stay afterwards for 10 minutes and help clean up the room, polish the floor, I'll pay you one card for working 10 minutes. Okay. Now I can spend these otherwise worthless cards, right? You need them to pay the tax to get out of the room. Okay, now let's say there's 50 people in this room, and I decide I'm only going to spend 40 cards. 10 of you guys aren't going to be able to find work. You're going to be unemployed. Okay, and let me show you something else. And I'll show you. See the back of this card? There's no gold behind this card. Okay, but you're still willing to work for it, even with no gold behind it. Why? Because you need it to pay the tax. And you are unemployed. So now, if there's 50 people, I only spend 40, there are going to be 10 unemployed, at least. Somebody might earn more than one, but there are going to be at least 10 unemployed. And there's no possible way they can get a job, no matter how many structural reforms I make. No matter what level of education they might be. You might all have advanced degrees in cleaning the floor. Okay? But you're still not going to be able to get a job. Now, it would be better if you did. I'm going to have a better floor from those 40 people working and 10 others breathing down their neck, but it's not going to solve unemployment. Now, why else might you want this card? You might want to save one. People walk around with cash in their pockets. Now, why would any of you want to save one? Well, maybe you want to take one home to prove to your husband or wife that you were actually in an economics lecture. Right? So let's say you all decided, you wanted to save one card. Well, now, when I offer jobs, I'm going to spend at least 100 cards, because you're all going to have one to pay the tax and one to save, right? Take home to prove you were here. Well, what if I only decide to spend 90? Unemployment. Why? Because I'm not spending enough to cover the need to pay the tax and the need to save. Is there any other possible reason there could be unemployment? And the answer is no. Okay? So you got the government, the United States government, taxes $3 trillion. Actually it's 3.5 this year. Taxes $3.5 trillion. Spends $4 trillion. It spent $500 billion deficit. It's spending more than it's collecting, right? There's still unemployment. What does that mean? It hasn't spent enough to cover the tax bill and the need to save. It probably needed to spend $5 trillion to cover all the savings desires, to not have the unemployment. Okay. All right. So the point is, unemployment is always and necessarily a case where the government has not spent enough of its currency to cover the tax bill and the need to save. Because it means there's still people willing to work for that thing to get out of here. Now, the answer to that is either to spend more or tax less. That's a political decision. All right? But that's always going to be the case. So that is like the basics of the whole thing. Now I'm going to give you a couple of things that follow from this. For example, why was my guy collecting cards? So I could get them to be able to pay you? No. I have to pay you first and then collect the cards. It's impossible for the other way around. Okay, just like a football stadium. They have to get the tickets out there before they can collect them. They don't collect the tickets first and then sell them. Okay, it's backwards. Now, if you go in the old days when we used to live in New York and there were subway tokens, the guys were selling them and people were dropping them in the thing, you could watch them going around and around and you can say, oh, I see how it works. First they collect the tokens, then they sell them. But the New Yorkers, we'd say, no, first they sell them, then they collect them. But you can't tell by watching them go around. Every congressman says we have to get the dollars first before we can spend them. We got to get them through. What we don't get through taxing, we have to borrow from China and leave the debt to our grandchildren. They got it backwards. They spend first and then they borrow. Okay, it has to be. There's no other way to do it. So again, for the analogy, I've got my cards. I pay you first. You pay the guy. I pay you enough to save. If I was the government, I would then borrow back your savings, the money I just spent. First, the government, they don't actually give you cards. They credit your account, and then they borrow the same dollars they just stuck in your account at the Fed, put them in another account called a Treasury security, a securities account, and that's called borrowing money. So I give you each earn 50 cards to pay the tax, another 50 to save, and I say, wait a minute, I'll hold those cards for you in a different account over here called a Treasury security. I'll pay you some interest in more cards. And do you mind doing that? I'll send a note to your husband or wife so you can still prove you're here, right? You can bring home the bank statement. Okay, and would you do that? Well, most people would do that. Just assume you'd do that. Some people hold cash, but most people would want their money in the bank or in a treasury security. Okay, that's what the government does. Now, why do they do that? Do I do that because I need to get your cards to borrow them back so that I can spend them? No. Okay. The reason actually is it's been lost. It's an anachronism back to the gold standard. Under the gold standard, the initial cards had gold on the other side. The money was convertible into gold at the Treasury. But if you bought Treasury securities, you couldn't convert it into gold until after they matured. So rather than have the whole gold supply at risk, the government would issue bonds, and then the gold is safe at least for a while, and then when people wanted to cash their money in, they had gold for that. They had liquidity. Okay? And the same with any fixed exchange rate. Hong Kong, right now, fixed exchange rates. I think Bulgaria, fixed exchange rates. Okay? But for the United States today, it's entirely inapplicable.